Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Global VC Sports and Sport Hiatus office hours. It is Wednesday, June 3rd, and we have a tremendous lineup here to talk today about college athletics in the post-COVID era and what you can really expect. And I would like to spend a couple of minutes just quickly saying hello, welcoming everyone, speaking to a couple of, I think, important topics, and then the fastest that I can get out of the way so that this rock star crew can get going. I think the better it is for all. I'd be remiss if I didn't speak about what's going on in the world. So I wanted to do that very briefly and simply say that we'd be remiss to not acknowledge the recent events that are going on across our towns, our cities, our universities, our campuses, and really across our country. We're a tight-knit community. Our group and our role is to bring together entrepreneurs, executives, and investors from various groups that touch sports, media, and technology. These represent every aspect of our community, and our hearts and our minds and our thoughts are with everyone through a crazy, unprecedented, which is maybe an overused word at these days in our lives. So on behalf of all of us, all the people in the Boston VC community, the San Francisco VC community, the NYVC community, the London VC community, and the team that works in Sport Hiatus, and obviously everyone on this call, we hope everyone's healthy and safe and sending warm thoughts and hoping that we get to a place where we're all stronger together sooner than later, soon enough. With that, I wanted to do a quick brief introduction and tell you a little bit about what we're doing here with our weekly office hours and get out of the way so that our awesome panelists can chat. I think based upon our quick pre-call, Lisa might queue up one question and our panelists may have lots to talk about. I've seen the best moderators, they ask a question and the panelists really just go for quite some time. So that's awesome. And I think this is gonna be an incredible conversation. This takes a village to put these things together. And so thank you to all the people involved, and I'll thank people individually at the end of our session. But I really wanted to simply say it was March 12th, which is coming up on 3 months ago, that we launched Sport Hiatus. We launched the day after the NBA suspended its season for a lot of the right reasons based upon a positive test on the court. And for the better part of 3 months, the world has been going through a time where we're all craving live sports, we're all craving content. What I think we're also creating is an opportunity, or even perhaps an obligation, to innovate and to celebrate leadership and creativity. And that's what Sport Hiatus and Global VC Sports are really all about. Bringing together all of the things, covering, there are hundreds of stories that are simply about people that are doing great things, innovative things, creative opportunities to the point when sports come back safely, for all of us to be that much bigger, better, and stronger. So with that, we are on Twitter. Please tweet away at Sport Hiatus, at Global VC Sports. There's a tip jar in the corner. We make everything we do free. So feel free to help us fund that if you like, but obviously, please put those funds to where in your life they're most important and most valuable. So with that, I wanted to do a quick introduction to each of our panelists and start our panel. So today's event, college athletics in the post-COVID era, a little bit about what we can each expect. For our moderator today is Lisa Murray. Lisa, who serves as Octagon's Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer, oversees marketing and communications for Octagon's agency worldwide. She also serves as a sought-after resource for Octagon's long-standing corporate clients, including many, just to name a few: Home Depot, Allstate, Taco Bell, Cisco, Johnson & Johnson, MasterCard, and so on. So welcome, Lisa. Thank you for being here. Bernadette McGlade, who's the commissioner of the Atlantic 10, one of the most well-respected and experienced leaders in Division I athletics. Bernadette has overseen the Atlantic 10 as commissioner since 2008. Under her leadership, the Atlantic 10 and its 14 member institutions have risen to one of the top 10 conferences in the country. Amongst this group, we'll even make it higher. In addition to leading her conference, McGlade currently serves as a 5-year appointment through 2022 on NCAA Men's Basketball Committee. So welcome, Bernadette. Muffet McGraw, recently retired Notre Dame women's basketball coach, as head coach of Notre Dame's women's basketball team from 1987 through 2020. McGraw compiled a 769 winning percentage, 905 and 272. I looked it up. Really impressive, truly impressive. And McGraw led her team to 9 Final Fours, 2 national championships, and is revered as one of basketball's greatest coaches It was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2017. So welcome and truly happy to have you here. This is an all-star lineup. And last but not least, our perhaps first entree of a office hours panelist wearing a tie. So Joe, you get that award. Thank you for being here. Joe is Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics Programs and the Director of Athletics for University of Oklahoma. Since his arrival in Oklahoma in April of 1998, the school has won a total of 18 national championships across football, softball, golf, gymnastics, and so on. Joe holds the title as the longest tenured athletic director in the Power Five. So I don't think anything needs to be said beyond what an all-star lineup. Let me get out of the way and let you guys take it away. So Lisa, this is your show. Have a great time and thank you all for being here.
Bye, Jeff. Hi, everybody. First, before we start, where is everybody talking from? So I'm in my office in Connecticut. Joe, is that your dining room?
It might as well be, as much time as I spend here. No, I've actually come over to the office like I do 2-3 times a week, although it really doesn't matter most of the time since we're doing Zoom calls from home. You know, just be here, be there, it doesn't matter, but I'm actually on campus.
And Muppet, where are you?
This is my den at home.
Beautiful. I
cleaned out my office and put it all in my den.
And Bernadette, where are you?
I'm in our offices. I'm like Joe. I come in and out on various days of the week. And so I'm in the office today.
Well, thank you all for joining. Again, I have a feeling I'm going to ask 1 or 2 questions and you guys are going to take it from there and duly noted. I am in awe of all 3 of you. As Jeff mentioned, these are confusing times for everybody. And I'm going to start with a big picture question and ask, how has COVID-19 impacted the business of college sports overall in the last few months and what you foresee it to be? So Bernadette, do you want to start us off?
Sure, I'll be happy to. And again, thank you. I appreciate participating, and certainly 2 great colleagues, also longtime associates and friends. And I think the impact has been dramatic. I mean, for the first time in history, when you see the conference championships, including our championship that was at Barclays Arena being closed down after 1 day of play, and the NCAA men's championship, you know, an iconic sporting event, and then every other sporting event afterwards that was canceled or shut down for, you know, for good reason, certainly for the public safety and the safety of our student athletes and families and staff and fans and everyone associated. But truly a time period in this industry and a time period in this country that we've never experienced. You know, and then to see the resulting economic crises that obviously shutting down essentially America has caused this unbelievable economic crisis that now is compounding it, are issues that everyone is dealing with. And I think, you know, then you compound that with certainly the civil unrest that we see, you know, right now over the last 7 days that Jeff mentioned briefly in his opening comments. And, you know, there are real changes that are needed in terms of the civil unrest and the racism and violence and brutality that everyone in this country. So I think 3 huge forces that have really, that America is focused on it, and certainly intercollegiate athletics is being impacted to a significant degree. And we're all looking to come through this in a really positive way.
Muppet?
You know, I think it's going to change the way we do business in a lot of places. I think right now, coaches, obviously, salaries are being frozen, which I think is a really good thing. I think that it's a way we can help with our budgets. I think we're looking at our budgets and saying, where can we cut things? Recruiting is changing dramatically. Do we need to be going out as much as we do? Can we do things with live streaming? Can we do our home visits just this way on a Zoom call? Do we need to be traveling around the country to do things? I think the financial impact is going to be drastic, especially without football, which runs most of our budgets. And I think going forward, things are going to change. And I think there's some good things that can come of this, because for, especially in the recruiting area, there's probably some things that we do a little over the top that we really don't need to do.
And Joe, big picture thoughts for now?
Well, I appreciate comments of both Muffet and Bernadette. Hard to quantify at the moment. You know, I think we would maybe tag it as history making. Someday it's going to be tagged historic because we are going through such unprecedented times, and they keep seemingly evolving more and more that direction instead of, you know, calming down. Yes, we see various cities around the country opening up at various rates. We still have the virus and all kinds of statistics around the virus and severity and continued deaths, but we still have to be very careful. But I also think that this has been a time for all of us, whether it's our personal life or within intercollegiate athletics, to stop and really assess priorities. I've been a person that believes in the law of intentionality. I'm a big John Maxwell fan, and so I've read his books for many, many years, and I've always, adopted that type of philosophy among many others. And we've been very intentional about planning, but planning for what? We've been strategic planners before, we've been game planners before, we create playbooks, lots of things. This has been different because we haven't had a lot of information as readily available in those planning stages as we would wish. Mm-hmm. And so we have to continue to be flexible, patient, be able to pivot. We've done a lot of contingency planning. And I think if anything, the pause, the priority setting, and the fact that whether it's any way we're doing it, mostly through technology, in some ways, I think it's brought our staffs closer together. And what Bernadette said, it's really beyond heartbreaking to see what's happening across our country on one hand. And on the other hand, I hope that the activism that is geared toward creating effectual change actually is successful. We certainly have an opportunity with intercollegiate athletics to be very diverse, to understand and celebrate the strength of our diversity. And if anything, sports, whatever level it is, can be unifying. Yes, there are people that cheer for their own team, but in the end, it's a unifying factor, and hopefully we can properly use our platforms. We're certainly talking about ways where we can make that happen.
Well, there's nothing better than sports to do that, Joe. So I'm hoping that that will be the case. And it is definitely a time for change on many, many levels. Have there been decisions made as it relates to what's going to be happening at the conference and at your school, Joe and Bernadette, moving forward? Or have decisions been made as to timing and what's going to happen when?
Yeah, I'll pass it off to Bernadette here in a second, but yes, some of those decisions have been pondered for a while. Some we wait on our governing body, the NCAA, which is made up of the member institutions. Then the information that is shared amongst conferences, conference commissioners like Bernadette. Then, as it flows through the member institutions, in our case, the Big 12. So that's been sort of the tree of decision making. And in the last, say, 10 days, we've had a little bit more certainty to some dates where we can begin to come back and have our student athletes on campus, very limited ways, mind you. But we're managing that along with the perspectives, the laws, the restrictions that might exist in our state or in our own community. So lots of inputs to those decisions, but ultimately the campuses are charged with making a decision that best reflects what they can do in their community.
And from the conference perspective, the answer to that is yes as well. We took the opportunity from literally March 12th all the way through the mid part of May, which is when we traditionally hold our spring meetings and we approve and make decisions for next year's budget and any changes in any of our championship and regular season schedules and conference schedulings and conference events. So we had the opportunity to really do some hard thinking and make some decisions with a lot of the forecasting that we were able to do based on the limited information that we had from a public health perspective, from a financial perspective, from a higher education perspective. And the bottom line is, from a higher education perspective, campuses opening up in the fall with students on the ground and on campus is going to be critically important into as far as the lifeline for intercollegiate athletics on campus. So we were able to make some decisions, and the decisions that we made in May that were approved by our athletic directors and subsequently will be by our presidents actually at the end of this week, have to do with decisions that we felt comfortable with, whether or not there was a delay in the fall schedule as far as the start of the fall schedule, or whether there was an interruption in the fall schedule. Obviously, if there's no fall schedule, then all the contingency plans go out the window. But we said there was a good probability of three things. Either every campus opens on time and we try to get back to normalcy, or there's a possibility that campuses might have delayed openings, maybe into September. And there's a possibility that we could be back on campus. And as Joe mentioned earlier, there could be an interruption if there's an outbreak or whatever, and everyone is shut down again. So the decisions that we made from a conference perspective were basically tightening up our conference schedules, which we control. We didn't want to impact the non-conference schedules right now because there are contracts and legal issues and so many variable factors with that. But as a league, we can help our member schools with the travel, with the class time, missed class time for our student athletes, with the financial impact of how we run our conference schedules. So that's the route that we took in the A10. And then we tightened up the formats for our actual A10 championships under the premise that there will be a fall schedule, we can run our championships, and there will be a postseason NCAA slate of fall championships, et cetera. So, and they're decisions that we'll stick with, whether or not there's a delayed opening or whether or not we open on time. And we felt it was very proactive. It was in the best interest of our student athletes, safety, and actually it opened up some weekends, which we feel like from a mental health issue is really important because the student athletes, the coaches, there's a tremendous amount of stress right now, not only in the country, but within the scope of our college age student athletes that virtually have their hopes and dreams, in the balance right now. So we felt like opening up some weekends that we traditionally would have conference contests was going to be a good thing, whether or not they had a contest or they could take the weekend off.
Mm-hmm. Now, would I be assuming, well, are there fans or are there not fans? What are we talking about?
I'm staying very optimistic about fans and fans of some number. It's kind of interesting, Lisa. There really isn't any national governing body or CDC or World Health Organization or anybody acting on behalf of making those kinds of decisions. We're all trying to assimilate information from a lot of different fronts. Our colleagues across the country, what they're doing, looking at what some of the professional organizations are doing, how they're reacting to it, and realizing, we're still talking about most of our sports not starting until September 1st. That's if it happens to start during or on a regular time basis. So we still have roughly 3 months, to have more and more information come to us. But we've planned on fans. We've planned on a full stadium, but we've spent a better part of the last 3 months in contingency planning of all different levels, financial to how we welcome staff back in advance of welcoming student athletes back, the certain key date points of that, and then what we would do if we can't have a full stadium, what would a stadium look like practicing social distancing, and what would that mean, and how many fans we could accommodate. In addition to that, we're trying to think about how it feels in the shoes of our fans. So we're trying to create a driveway to driveway experience where they don't have to touch as many things as they once did, you know. So we had already moved forward in digital ticketing, so that helped. We're deep into the planning of creating less interaction at the concession stand, you know, ordering food on a phone, paying for it on a phone, picking it up, you know, not having to, you know, exchange a lot. Other kinds of experiences where they don't have to interact. Sure, they'll be wearing protective gear, masks, maybe gloves. We'll have to have all that be part. And we're just trying to help our fans understand that there's going to be some awkwardness. There's going to need some of their patience. But the key is health and safety for the players involved in the sports, the coaches that are on the sidelines, officials, everybody that's around those on the field, and then what we can do up in the stands with our fans.
So Muffet, on the perspective of the student athlete, if there aren't fans in the stadium or on site, if there's partial, how does that impact the athlete herself or himself, and how do you see that playing out?
I think it has a dramatic effect on the game. The atmosphere is so important, especially in the women's game. When you go into certain arenas and the crowd is just kind of just so loud, and the play, and it can affect the game. I always say that, you know, our crowd can give us as much as 10 points in a game. And in women's basketball, our fans are generally senior citizens. So that group is being impacted the most with this virus. It's hard to imagine college athletics without fans, but there's got to be a way for us to see how we can social distance in our arenas, what we can do. Are we going to be able to have music? I mean, we cannot have a dead arena. And it'd be like playing the 11 a.m. game in the conference tournament. Nobody's there, and the team that wins is the team that's the self-motivated players, because so many players really, they kind of thrive off of that energy that the crowd brings to them. So now everybody's going to be rushing to recruit those kids that are, you know, bring their own energy, and they're the ones that are going to be self-motivated, because it's going to be a very different look.
And you alluded to recruiting earlier in our conversation. So you can do Zoom calls to recruit. What other techniques are coaches using to recruit during these challenging times?
Well, I think coaches are taking their phones and iPads around campus and giving campus tours and saying, this is what it'd be like if you came here. And I tell you, it's a time for creativity. It really is a time for you to kind of figure out some different ways of doing things. And we're making videos to send to them. This is what a game day would look like. This is what campus would look like. So I think you really have to do it. But that personal, intimate, face-to-face contact, that's so important in relationships. And that's going to be difficult. But we're looking at our home visits now. We're not going to be in your home. We're going to be on the screen. And it's going to lose a little bit in the translation.
Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, just playing off of what Coach said, I would say, our coaches and our staff, there are many ways we could get into, but our staffs have really shown a lot of creativity and innovation. Sometimes, you unleash something that is inside them, it's there, and now they have a chance to display it. But I've participated in quite a few virtual recruiting visits with our coaches. Even this is the best way we can do it during a dead period, and very organized, from the video tours of campus to the interactions with all parts of our campus and our department: academics, mental health, nutrition, strength and conditioning, sports medicine, any area that we can provide information about the resources available for student athletes. And then, of course, the interactions they have with the coaches themselves. I've enjoyed it. I think it's gone in a much more efficient way. You've had the attention of the recruit and their family. We've been able to time it so it makes most sense for them. If their parents are working and not able to do it at one time of the day, you can time it when everybody can be present, and you'd seemingly have their full undivided attention. I give credit to all of our staff members that created this new opportunity. I really believe that even though we've been innovative in this time period, I think, as Coach was saying, this is a wave of the future, and how we will adjust recruiting going forward, even when in-person connection can continue. Nothing takes the place for that, of course, but we can augment it in different ways than we ever have been before.
It's certainly more efficient, isn't it?
Mm.
It's so much more efficient that coaches can do 3 or 4 in one day, so we can, get to more recruits. And it's definitely cost saving. We're not traveling. And the bonus, I think, is we're home for our teams. That was the problem with going recruiting. You're leaving campus all the time, and here's your players around, and you don't have that contact with them. And especially now with what's going on, if they get back to campus, we're going to need to be there with them.
We talked about technology a little bit. So what new technologies is your conference institution using, be it new media technologies, production, distribution, things that'll be on site in the venues, sponsored licensing, merchandise? I know, Joe, you mentioned something about touchless ticketing. So any other new technologies you want to share today that have come through this initiative?
We're trying to imagine what it's like to be in the shoes of other people, how we can help them have an even better experience. I don't know how many different areas of our world are represented on our session today. I'm sure quite a few. It's an evolutionary point for us. We know some of this technology has been there. It's being presented to us the last few years. Some of us have already adapted to it, or we're evolving, in that direction. But this period of time is probably accelerated, everybody moving toward it. I mean, how many of us have heard of these stories where our parents, our grandparents, who have been slow to evolve to technology? Yeah, they might have a smartphone, but they don't want to mess with all the apps on the phone. They could call, they could text, they have a few things. But, just in the simplest ways, you mean I can order my groceries and they'll bring them out to my car? I can put it on my phone. I pay for it on my phone. I get my whole list. You can do that? I mean, it's been there for a couple of years. They just they fought it. And even when we announced digital ticketing, oh my gosh, the criticism we got from our fans. What do you mean? I collect my tickets. I don't have a smartphone. I don't like smartphones. I have a flip phone, and I can't use it for the reading a barcode or anything like that. Don't worry, we have answers for all of that. We just have to help
educate,
bring them forward, kind of lean in and pull them that direction. It's going to be a little bit awkward at first, but those are the kind of things. And I think, look, for many schools, talk about abrupt. Our students have had online classes before, but they didn't come to a campus to take all of their classes online. And yet, within an instant, we had to move them to totally online. That was obviously a transition for them, but think of the faculty. Not all the faculty teach their classes online. So we figured it out. It might have been a little tough in the first few days. You have all that demand on the system, but everybody figured it out. And I think that's what the beauty of this is, as difficult as it's been, the tragedies we've seen, the heartbreaking moments that we all empathize with. But during this time, as we try to move everybody forward, we've seen people show great moments of innovation, and we need to realize this is the chance to make it even better when we finally emerge.
Great point. We've got some questions that are coming in from the audience. From Muppet first, and then everyone else can contribute. How may the path to the WNBA change in the future, and should it change? So what can female basketball players in college do to put themselves in the best position to reach the pros and market themselves to brands and media partners?
I don't know that that's going to change too much from where we are now. The WNBA is making great strides with our new commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, doing some great things, getting the women to be able to stay here and make a better salary so they don't have to go to Europe. I think that we're in really good shape right now with where we are, but things like this season, is going to change things. They're going to play, and people may forget about them. So it's going to be really important for them to be on TV as much as possible. But now it looks like they'll be competing with the NBA at the same time. So I think for the student athlete, just to continue to look at the programs that they're going to and seeing if they can go to a place where they will be developed as a player, that the offense fits them. The transfer portal right now is just overflowing with people who, are just looking for a different experience. And so I think it's so important in this recruiting experience to really look ahead and see, what is this coach going to do for me to get me to the next level? And how is what they're doing in terms of their offense and the teams they play and the schedule that they play and the success that they've had, how's that going to help me advance?
Excellent. For anyone who wants to answer, how has the proliferation of social media changed your day-to-day, and what are the challenges social media present to you? Because it's taken on such a different demand during this time.
I would say from a conference perspective, it's made everyone more attentive and relevant. Everything happens in real time. And social media certainly ignites that and kind of fuels it to an unprecedented level. And as was mentioned earlier, I think the embracing of the technology has been just really an eye opener for everyone, because even as we said, that, the social media and technology, is being used at a really high level in the recruiting. And we have to remember, this is a generation of young people that grew up on screens. It's natural to them. It's second nature. And I think opening everyone's eyes to the power of social media. And that is in a good way as much as a negative way. It works both ways. And I think the impact and the reach is something that we've all embraced to a higher level and respected it much more, respectfully in terms of how it can impact every demographic. There's no boundaries. There's no economic boundaries. There's no geographic boundaries. And it's something that I think is going to just continue to accelerate and advance truly intercollegiate athletics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good things about Twitter, especially, but there's so many more that are negative. For this generation looks at how many likes did I get? How many people retweeted that? And their whole self-worth is based on that little heart at the bottom of their Twitter or Facebook page. And I think that's been a detriment. I think Bernie mentioned earlier, the mental health and the stress and the anxiety that kids are growing up with now is so much greater than before social media. And people don't generally get on there to tell you what a great job you're doing and how much they like you. There's a lot of people that really love that negative part of it. And it's tough for 18 to 22-year-olds to look at people constantly criticizing them. And I think it kind of impacts their confidence really in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, unfortunately, we run into cases where, a lot of our student athletes, anybody for that matter, has a lot of their self-esteem tied to how they're viewed and what they do. And maybe not quite sure why people react so negatively when they're trying to say something that maybe didn't come out right, but people see it just in its basic form. So it can be very powerful in communicating, sharing information, gathering information, but we also have to teach the proper use and moderation with it, so that there's a better balance. But it's the way we can get information out to our own constituency stakeholders, be it the student athletes, coaches, staff, or fans. And a lot of times, there's a lot of misinformation. We're just living in this period of time of misinformation that we just spoke about. So we've tried to use it to get information. For a long time, there was nothing. You think about it, everybody went from structure back to home, and that's all they had. TV, radio, social media, that's it. And so we needed to be more proactive in getting some information out, even if we're telling our constituents that as much as we're trying to gather information, they're just not enough to give you specific answers yet. But here's what we do know. and it's kind of reassuring. And I think it's a balance that we got to continually work to strike.
And I would think that our athletes will, well, there's such a demand for athlete content as well, player content. And the passion I know for college sports is out of control. So one listener wanted to ask, can each of you address your approach to the growing demand for player-driven content and how you as an organization and coach will address this growing demand from the fans?
Well, I think everybody wants an inside look. They want a behind the scenes look. And we are always trying to find new ways of making our student athletes, whether it's out in the community, things that they're doing, or just what they're doing when they're with their teammates, when they're at home, are they cooking or what are they doing in their daily lives? And I think it's great. And most of them love this. When you have extroverts and you have kids that, we have quite a few that think they're going to be on ESPN as an announcer one day. So we're trying to put them in a position where they can do those kinds of things. But it's a fun look, because when you see an athlete on the field or on the court, you're only seeing one part of them. You don't really get to know them as a person. You don't know how much fun they are off camera. And so that's what we look for, is we look for ways to really show the just the great camaraderie of our team, the chemistry of our team, but also individually, everybody's got some really great personalities and different things that we like to really show.
Excellent. So for all, do you see athletes or brands asking for new language in their scholarships or marketing agreements that address the pandemics now? So I think this is more on whether it's force majeure or anything else, these legal terms or things that people will ask that's in addition to what's traditionally been done.
Well, some contracts, depending on how they've been crafted, already have force majeure provisions or language in them. Not all, but some. I think we're dealing with, like we said, unprecedented times. None of us can say we'll never see a pandemic again, and none of us can predict we will. But we have to, learn more about things that happen. I moved here to Oklahoma. I never thought I'd see earthquakes in Oklahoma. They told me about tornadoes, but they didn't tell me about earthquakes. And there weren't earthquakes for a long, long time. Then all of a sudden there are earthquakes. And so you try to get earthquake insurance and forget it. We're not doing earthquake insurance. Fortunately, we had bought earthquake insurance. I don't know why we did, but we did. We haven't had any damage or anything of that nature, but it's trying to think through what we should do for, in our world of being proactive. I think you start first with what are the best practices to protect the interests of the people you serve, whether it's welfare, whether it's safety, health, financial, structural. We do so much, and as Bernadette and Muffet know, our staffs travel all over the United States and beyond. Student athletes do the same. We're opening up the world. They've given us a chance to be part of their world. We want to open up the world as we can positively influence it for them. And I think we've got to just think about all those different areas that allow us to serve people, and protections would be part of it. But I don't think we should have a fear. I think it's just being smart.
One of the things I worry about the most, you talked about opening up the world to them. Now I feel like recruiting is going to go regional. We are going to get to the point where kids are saying, I don't want to get on a plane right now to go visit that campus, unofficially, especially if I can get in the car and drive somewhere. And what if this happens again? And I'm in California and I live in New Jersey. Like, what is going to happen then? So before you even get to the contract and what's in that, I think you're going to look and see, is there going to be a change to recruiting? Is it going to become more regional and even more local in some ways? But looking at the NCAA and the National Letter of Intent, I think the transfer policy for men's, women's basketball and football, you have to sit out 1 year. I think you're going to see a lot of waivers where kids are saying, you know what, I think I'd like to go closer to home. I think I'd like to transfer and get that immediate eligibility because of the COVID-19 panic. And so I think, that's going to change things a little bit. You know, we're probably going to go to an open transfer policy eventually anyway, but I do think that regionalized recruiting is going to change.
Bernadette, here's a question for you. How do you manage talking through 14 schools, all of whom have different interactions with COVID? Do you offer blanket solutions or recommendations, or how does that work?
From a conference perspective, what we try to do is cover the broadest possible spectrum of information. We try to be very attentive to all of our schools. We're located in 8 states and the District of Columbia. And you know, so you have all of your regulations in DC, that's not a state, and then you have the other 8 states. So we try to be as broad as we possibly can, and then to be able to allow the information that can get individualized per institution, because we have multiple institutions in some states. And I think that that's critically important. And again, from a conference perspective, we try not to be overly prescriptive so that we dominate what might be the best decision on an individual institution basis. So we want to be, you know, we want to be helpful, we want to be informed, we want to be accurate with the information, and then we want to be able to put guardrails in place so that we can all function together, which is the beauty of a league, so that there's strength in numbers and there's strength in being collectively united on the fronts of which you can without compromising any individual school.
How can you adjust to the competitive inequality of that? That's my biggest worry. Some schools in some states are going to be open. Their kids are on campus. They're going to be practicing. Other schools in your league, nobody can come to campus, not just from a recruiting perspective, no unofficial visits are allowed, where you can visit this school, but not this school in your league. This team is practicing already. This team hasn't had their players back on campus. I wonder where we'll go when we come to that.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about that. And the one thing that we've tried to really emphasize is that hopefully this is a small capsule of time that we're in right now. And there very well be conferences and institutions are going to have to come together and decide, if only half of your institutions are up and running, are you in fact still going to move forward with conference competitions and with championships, et cetera? And so they're hard conversations. They're conversations that include from the president and chancellor of the institution all the way through the athletic director, all the way through to the conference office. And so, you know, we're looking at those decisions, as is every other conference right now. But there's, you know, been a pretty universal decision that, you know, if there are some states that are slower coming back online than others, that we're not going to penalize or hold back some institutions and student athletes and programs that can in fact be up and running. And that we also won't penalize those that maybe get a later start. So there's no perfect answer here. There's no correct answer. And until we actually get to the real time of the fall semester starting and our fall sports starting, we're not going to know exactly how vast that dynamic will be.
I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. Seems to be a question that everyone's asking. What are your general thoughts on the NCAA's new name, image, and likeness rule, and what's next? Does anyone want to chime in on that little topic?
Bernadette, go right ahead.
You want me to lead off on this one?
It's not a little topic.
Yeah,
I know.
A little topic.
I think it's going to need all 3 of our perspectives, and then probably another 3 months of this Zoom webinar. But, you know, I'll lead off. I think it's been a long time coming. We've talked about it. I mean, Joe, we've talked about name, image, and likeness and being able to give student athletes more control over the usage of their own name, image, and likeness. I think there's a clear demarcation between how a student athlete can utilize their name, image, and likeness while they're competing in the scope or in the enterprise of intercollegiate athletics. And there's a clear demarcation between that and quote unquote pay for play. So it really, those guardrails have to be put in place. There's been a tremendous amount of work. There's been a very impressive working group that has worked very hard in the last year and a half over setting up some basic parameters. And now we all have to roll up our sleeves, and we're going to have to support a change in the NCAA legislation right now that prohibits some rights and privileges that in fact our student athletes should be able to exercise. And I think that that's going to be very important to get that legislation crafted and passed over the next 6, 7, 8 months, probably at the latest. Otherwise, you're going to see every state in the country putting in their own type of legislative rules that would regulate and basically, reach into intercollegiate athletics that could almost make it untenable for us to even have a association, to have conferences, and to be able to compete on a level playing field. That's the one thing that can truly upset the level playing field. So I kind of hold up. I know Joe and Muffet have certainly, there's so many perspectives to this question.
Joe, what do you think?
Truly is. And we already have, as Bernadette mentioned, quite a few states who have voted in laws. There are different times in which those laws become effective. That's a challenge in and of itself. But to her point, we've had quite a few of very special, very intelligent, very committed people working together to try and craft, the path forward here. We've spent a lot of years running away from this. Now we got everybody running toward it. And that's a good thing, because we have the people who are committed to figure out this path forward. You mentioned the social media, use of social media earlier, and how we talk about that with our staff and with our student athletes. We're not going to be in a position to actually facilitate the business relationships for any of the student athletes. And that's not going to be the role of intercollegiate athletics, but we are in a position to help be greater teachers, motivators, technicians, create the life skills elements that go along with this, so that our student athletes are better prepared to take advantage of these opportunities going forward. What gets lost in this oftentimes is that there have been thousands of cases over the last several years where student athletes presented ideas to the NCAA, and the NCAA provided waivers to them. In fact, the vast majority of them were approved. We only heard about the ones that weren't, for whatever reason that they weren't. You could argue whether they should have been approved or not, in individual cases. But I think this is just really becoming wiser about how we can help the student athletes lead their own life. We talk about helping them build their brand. Many of them are already coming to us with a pretty significant brand before they ever step foot on campus. So I think the ideas of creating the pathway forward, continuing to have it tethered to their educational experience, their athletic experience, and their life experiences going forward is going to be, the way that we can help everybody have some success in this area.
Well, we had a player that actually got one of those waivers. Arike Ogunbowale was asked to be on Dancing with the Stars, and that was a great situation for her to be able to do that, and it was a great experience for her. And I think there are some things that are legitimately great life experiences for our student athletes, but I think it's going to be opening the door to abuse. I think that we're going to look at women's programs will definitely suffer, because if an organization is looking to use someone to market their product or do whatever they can do, I think we're going to turn into the football players. The quarterback is going to get this kind of money to do this. And then when that happens, what's it going to look like in the locker room when some of your players are getting paid for something and some of them aren't? What's that going to do to the team chemistry? I think that if we could put the guardrails on, which seems logical, but when you look at what happened in men's basketball over the past few years with the abuse there, I think we're just ripe for that, especially with boosters at certain schools being a little more active than at other schools. And I worry about the lack of amateurism. What happened to that? That was, I was all in favor of the cost of attendance to pay players for, they can't work, they need to get things, but I'm really uncertain about where this is going to go.
Any other comments on that before we leave it? Okay. We're just about done here. As we close out, COVID-19 has certainly impacted budgets and the economic impact of the conferences and individual schools and programs. Do you see the consolidation of sports be the trend for athletic departments and conferences based on this, or not?
Well, I'll jump in with this. The last thing anyone in our roles want to be part of is reducing opportunities for student athletes. It's a hard thing. And, you know, at this point in time, we understand the economic realities. We're doing our best to navigate around the funding for student athlete services or the sports themselves. In other words, what I'm trying to say by that is we're trying to protect that first. And we could cut a lot, you know, before we get to that. And we are, but not trying to affect the opportunities that we provide. But there are a lot of other economic realities that may come our way. Don't know. You know, various schools are facing them in different ways. There's a lot of pressure on the whole enterprise, if you will. Don't know, as Coach was just saying, don't know the impact of name, image, and likeness yet, because we don't have the rules in front of us. We don't have all the guardrails. We don't know all of that yet. So there's just a lot of strain being put on everything we're doing. But we wouldn't be in our roles if it wasn't for student athletes, having them on campus and being able to sponsor sports programs as broad-based as they might be from one campus to the next. So hopefully we can find a way to keep the opportunities present for student athletes, because that is the reason, you know, we all decided to be part of this. And we've got to be able to find ways to, you know, strengthen that, protect it, and, you know, put it in the position to be successful going forward.
I would concur with everything that Joe said. I would say, you know, the one thing from a conference perspective, it's no secret, it's been highly publicized, the, you know, distribution, our revenue resources from the NCAA as a result of COVID and the men's championship being canceled were reduced by 68%, which is millions and millions of dollars when you're looking at a conference like the A10 and other conferences across the country. And, you know, what it's caused us to do is to really focus on the priorities. I agree with Joe that, you know, the last thing anyone wants to do from a conference or an institutional level is to cut sports or to reduce opportunities for our student athletes, but to keep that in a really high quality experience for all the student athletes. And it's caused all of us to, hopefully, we have a rainy day fund, and we have to, that's what it's for. And so we have to go into our reserves, and we've got to be able to cover the expenses and really hope and pray that this is a one-year blip on the economic impact. And then also it's going to really depend again on the situation with higher education and colleges and universities opening up. And someone said earlier that students want to go and they want to be on campus going to class. They don't necessarily want to be paying tuition and taking their classes online. So I think the health and well-being of our colleges and universities will again run parallel to the health and well-being of our intercollegiate athletic programs. And within the year, you know, we hopefully we all anticipate that we're going to be back on track, and we would have used our reserve funds to get through a little bit of the hardships that we have now, but be back to normalcy and in good financial stead.
Well, no one wants to see programs cut, but it's already happened. In the I know in the MAC, there's a school that dropped 3 sports somewhere in Carolina. I read the other day that Connecticut's looking at possibly dropping more sports, and that will have obviously a disastrous effect. And we hope that Title IX will keep the parity there and the equality there. But I think we have to look at different ways of doing things. Where there's a lot of trips to the Bahamas, to these great spots that are probably all going to be canceled. Do we need to look regionally and play more teams in your region? What about conference scheduling? Do we need to look at an Ivy League or a Big Ten type of format? Is it a Friday, Sunday, Thursday, Saturday, where you travel and then you just stay and you play another team instead of the constant back and forth? How it can make it more efficient. You don't want to go commercial. We've been blessed, I think, in the Power Five to be able to charter to most schools. It's safer. It's definitely a better environment for your team, but the cost of it is pretty extreme.
All great thoughts. As we close this out, and we think about the new normal that's going to be coming, we hope sometime soon. You've all alluded to something that you hope has been positive that you've gotten out of this. And it has been very challenging and truly a tragedy. But I do like to think that there's one or two things that will come out of the last few months that will stay with us forever. So does anyone have any thoughts as we close this out of something that has been a teeny bit of a silver lining?
I feel like I've connected with people a lot more on the phone. I think that when you're so busy, because you're traveling and you're doing so many things, you don't take time to sit down and talk to somebody on the phone, even if it's just a phone call or a FaceTime, instead of a quick text. Now you're actually reaching out and making sure everybody's okay. I think there's a lot of anxiety. And so I think it's brought families closer together.
I would concur with that. I think, two really positive things that is coming out of here is that everybody has reassessed and reprioritized. And we've all come to realize what's really important. The old saying that if something's not important 5 years from now, it's not important now. And that's an interesting way to look at things, that when you worry and stress out about so much. But, I've said to, many of my colleagues and myself and my family and their families that what an unprecedented time that you've been able to spend with your families, that otherwise all of us, the three of us on this call, we would be, more than probably 70% of the days that we've just had, we'd probably be away from our families, traveling for work and doing things for the company and doing things for the conference or the school or whatever. And for everyone, they will never have this time again. They've recaptured such quality time with those they love, and hopefully everybody has stayed as safe as possible, and et cetera. And so I think that's really going to be a takeaway. And I think the other takeaway is something that both Joe and Muffet mentioned, is the efficiency. We realized we were doing some things like really over the top in some regards. And the efficiency of meetings on Zoom without everybody getting and traveling to one city and having a meeting in the hotel at the Chicago airport. All of a sudden everyone is staying right home, even from a big picture of, the environment and pollution and all of that. We've all realized and become comfortable with this efficiency of virtual meetings, not to replace in-person meetings 100%, but it certainly can replace in-person meetings to some percentage.
Agree. Joe, take us home.
Well, I've realized that I don't need a haircut as often as I used to get one. I've never combed my hair back like that before, but we're going on a lot longer time between haircuts than I ever would have imagined.
Joe, you can't talk about hair with Muffet and me on the phone. No. and with Lisa.
Of course, I probably lost more in this last 3 months, but I just to play off those other comments, the technology piece, the efficiency, the connection with family at home. We're having more dinners together than I can remember. We used to have dinners sitting in the stands of any number of sporting events because we were at basketball, football, baseball, softball, volleyball, whatever it might be. So we've grown up, our family's grown up like that. But as people that are on this call that share the kind of lifestyles that pull us away from home, I think this has been both a reflection point for us and an inflection point for us going forward. And I think we're going to take a lot that we've learned, still learning. I do believe that the people that have been trying to do their best to prepare for whatever eventuality we see, in keeping people together. We've had three things we wanted to do more than anything: connect, communicate, and collaborate through this time. Share information, completely transparent with everything. We may not know every answer to every detail, but if we stay connected and we're talking to each other, that keeps us together. And I think we've been able to do that and find different ways to do it than we ever thought were possible before. And when we get through this, whatever stage it is, we could press on that accelerator and go forward and create whatever the new normal may be.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you all so much. I enjoyed my time with you very much. Jeff?
If our goal was to shine a light, well, I tried to make my background beginning of a metaphor of shining the light, but if our goal was to shine a light on what to expect, this was about as impressive, smart, honest, lively, real talk around what to expect. And so to each of you, truly, Bernadette, Muffet, Joe, Lisa, thank you. This is an honest, great, strong dialogue around what things will look like. Yeah, when we have our next normal. People often talk about, I can't wait for things to go back to normal. And the answer is, there will be a next normal. There may be a current normal. There will be maybe a new normal. There may be a next normal. But to the degree that we're all eyes wide open and thinking about how we adjust and adapt, we're all going to hopefully be bigger and better prepared. So truly thank you, Lisa, Bernadette, Muffet, Joe, and the person who's behind all of this, who has not yet been thanked, Dan Cohen, who's a colleague of Lisa at Octagon, who helped with the brainchild of putting together this group. I truly wanted to say thank you. A couple of quick things as we wrap up. Joe, you said we all root for our teams, and you stressed our teams. And I looked around the background and I saw the word magic. I saw the word bet on women. I saw the word fight. These are all things we could all use a little bit of in our lives. But while we're all betting on our team, sports really are one team. And you said it best. We're all in this together. So be active, be thoughtful, be safe. We're all aligned together. Now is not the time for divisiveness. Stand up, and all the things that we can do to be together and be aligned really is, it's who we are, and it's what we do, and it's why we created this group in the first place. So our next event is next Wednesday. So we're doing these on Wednesdays from 12 to 1. Our next event will be really a fun conversation looking at the media landscape for what we're calling the current normal. It's going to be Harvey Schiller, who's the chairman of the Schiller Management Group and has a tremendous background and experience, and Christine Brennan, who's needs no introduction, but she's been across USA Today and CNN and ABC News and PBS NewsHour, NPR, and many others. And so that'll be a week from today, but I really don't think it gets much better than this conversation. So I'll wrap it up as I always do with our mission, which is our goal is to be supportive, to support leagues, teams, athletes, broadcasters, publishers, brands, agencies, coaches, athletic directors, partners, entrepreneurs, and investors. We are one team. Sports never stop. Fans never stop. So be creative, be innovate. And then I want to add also on top of that now, be active, be thoughtful, and be safe. With that, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.